In Louisiana in 1873, local black Republicans began to arm themselves and mobilize in preparation for the statewide elections because they anticipated violence. This was at the behest of the Reconstruction government, but later towards the election, as they were surrounded by a mob of Confederate veterans and militant members of the newly formed Ku Klux Klan, they began trying to surrender, turn in their weapons, and under the white flag, they were massacred, anywhere from 50 to 160 of them in what became known as the Colfax Massacre. And up until only a few years ago, there was a monument erected to the White League, which was formed in the aftermath of this massacre, saying that it was a victory of white supremacy. Now, after the massacre, the members, the participants of the White League in Louisiana began to push national papers to establish state chapters of the White League, one of which formed outside of Eufaula, Alabama. And in 1874, with elections looming, the black Republicans began to arm up and anticipated violence, camping in the woods right outside of town. Of course, local residents thought that they were about to invade, and White League members basically positioned themselves throughout town. And on the day before the massacre began, they started killing people throughout town. They caught a black child trying to vote, and rather than rough him up and turn him away, they brought him into a back alley and stabbed him. Well, on the following day, on November 3rd, 1,000 of those black Republicans marched into town, heavily armed, demanding the right to vote, and the White League cowardly ambushed them, killing anywhere between 15 and 40. And the monument, which was erected in 1979, or the historic marker, only mentions the later ambush of the election supervisor, a Republican judge appointed by the Reconstruction government, a man named Elias Keels. The only mention of any violence that happened on the election riot of 1874 is the fact that a mob restored Democrat rule throughout Barbour County, and also the fact that a 16-year-old had been shot, supposedly in the crossfire. Now, this 16-year-old is buried here behind me. His name is Willie Keels. He was the son of the Republican judge who was so hated throughout the Deep South. There's even one newspaper which says that he deserves the highest rank in the synagogue of Satan. This was a massacre. It was a coup. And naturally, in the years following, almost no black Republicans went to vote. In fact, in the local newspapers, they were openly sold as slaves. Black Republicans were sold as slaves, although they were being marketed at a rate of about $2 a month max, so that they legally were not slaves. And of course, with Democrat rule consolidated over the Deep South, Reconstruction ended and decades of that disenfranchisement began. And of course, even though it was technically federally illegal to deny black folks the right to vote, they did intelligence tests, they did grandfather tests, and of course, these intelligence tests were only designed to turn them away. There were counties at which not a single black person was allowed to vote up until the 1960s. We are at the site of the 1874 election massacre now, and I wanted to tell this story in a little bit more detail at the grave of the child that the white mob killed. But what I want to point out here is just how mad this sign makes me. The sign makes it seem like a Democrat mob had got together and raided the polling area in which a child was killed, more or less accidentally in the crossfire. They call his father a scalawag, and they totally neglect to mention the fact that camped in the woods around me, in the area outside of the town of Eufaula, were 1,000 about black Republicans with guns who marched into town on November 3rd down Main Street and demanded the right to vote. Now, local officials had warned the federal government to stay out of it because this was still Reconstruction, and as these black men marched down Main Street, the white mob ambushed them, killing anywhere between 15 and 40, if not more. And then they marched on the town north of here before killing the 16-year-old son of the election supervisor and the judge, who was a Republican, driving him to move back up north. By the next few years, the Democrats had won total control over the state governments in the Deep South, and because of this, they forced federal troops to go home, and thus marked the beginning of decades of black disenfranchisement in the state of Alabama, Georgia, and the rest of the South. Many of the local papers reported that the Keels family, the Republican judge, Elias Keels, were from out of town, that they were scalawags and carpetbaggers, a fact that was reiterated by the plaque that was placed on the site where the massacre happened, saying that they ran out the scalawags. But if you take a look here, Isaac Keels was buried in this plot of land in 1823. This is some of the earliest settlement in the state of Alabama, and I'm unsure who Miss N. Keels is, but it might have been Willie Keels's mother, Elias Keels's wife. And of course, behind both of these graves is the son, who they say that he died in a skirmish as the white mob tried entering to restore Democrat order to the county, but I think they walked in and executed the son of the judge. And I don't like this. The Frisbee golf course goes right over the old black graveyard.